Hello, Bible readers, with Genesis 23:24 and the first half of chapter 25. The end of the Abraham narrative is here. First, Sarah dies, then Isaac finds a wife, and finally, Abraham, the father, dies. It's the same three elements that we're going to see when generations in the promise pass from Isaac and then from Jacob, where the mother dies, and then a new wife is found, and then the father dies. I'm going to say the most, in this case anyway, about this middle element, as there is the most to say. Brueggemann talks about a number of motifs or themes to be noted. One, that the entire family, the whole world of Abraham, is richly blessed. And we could do a whole word study on what being blessed is about. But a couple things about being blessed is there's no need for conflict. Everything is right and good. So like righteousness and blessed are connected closely. Also, another theme that is also closely related to being blessed is the idea of prosperity. And that is a theme also that runs throughout this story. Loyalty and fidelity, those two words put together, is a third theme. And then the fourth is the guidance of God. And this is, for me anyway, the most interesting part of this particular text, because God does nothing directly in these stories. There is no like sign or signal as God leads. There is no request for guidance. But there is an acknowledgement of God's guidance after the fact anyway. In verse 40, there's mention of an angel. And then nothing more is said of that angel. I wouldn't mind to hear more about what exactly is that all about. Brueggemann suggests that perhaps the angel is a device that puts the reader on notice that this seemingly natural sequence of affairs consists in more than meets the eye. God is at work here. A Hebrew word gets used here, naha, translated led, that occurs nowhere else in Genesis. And I think it's an interesting word that helps us understand kind of the quality, the texture of the leading that we're seeing here. When naha does get used in Exodus and in the Psalms, it's the kind of leading that God does as God guides in the wilderness in Exodus. And then it's the same word that gets used in the 23rd Psalm, how God leads beside still waters, for example. It's the kind of leading that provides well-being to someone in a time of stress. I think of a trust walk. When I've been blindfolded, let's say, and led around a room toward a destination. That naha, that kind of leading, is the kind of leading God is providing as Isaac requires and is looking for a wife. The story gets at all this in a very subtle way. The presence of God, the leading of God, the blessing, all that. It gets at it in a subtle way that all events are under God's eye, that are in God's care. It's a story that gives us an illustration of what it looks like to live in an understanding that life is accepted and perceived as a gift from God. Again, God doesn't intrude. God never busts into this story and says, I'm here, look, see me. But as Brueggemann says it, the story offers a worldview in which there are no parts of experience which lie beyond the purpose of God. It's how many Christians talk about God in their lives. The workings of God here are not spectacular, they're not magical or oddities. Disclosure of God comes by steady discernment and by readiness to trust the resilience that is present in the course of daily affairs. In other words, living a life of faith is not only about the big giant moments when you have to pretend your wife is your sister, or when you're asked to sacrifice your only son like an animal on a mountaintop. Those big response moments in Genesis, of course, get a lot of attention. But living a life that's conscious of God's care and gifts can also happen on Tuesdays Or as we say in worship, at all time and in all places. We don't have to live in suspicious, cynical fear every day in between these mountaintop faith response experiences. In faith, we can live in hope-filled affirmation every day. It's sad to leave the Abraham narrative, I think. I've learned a lot about God, but I will trust that the Jacob narrative will provide for me also. See what I did there? I'm trusting, like Abraham. So read chapter 25, verse 19. So that's picking up where we've left off. And read through chapter 36, 43. That's all going to be read in preparation for our next couple of weeks. I'm going to spend a day or two, like I have a couple other times, looking at the whole scope of this upcoming section, and then I'll dive specifically into the end of 25 and then specifically into chapter 26. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.